How's it, folks? Welcome back. This is Moving the Needle podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Yetling, but you're not tuning in for me. I've got a humdinger of a guest for you lined up. Someone I've been watching fly off cliffs, 360 off drops that I was too scared to go off half the time. He has been pioneering freeride for longer than I can remember, stepping away from sort of competition last few years. And I'm eager to dig into what it's like, especially on the freeride side, because I know what it's like on the racing side. But he's done great things for the sport, inducted into the Hall of Fame. Darren Bearcloth, the Bear Claw, the Claw, my man. Long overdue
What's
this,
going on,
but
buddy?
yeah, welcome.
Thanks, bud. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Shit. It's been long overdue. We crossed paths in Europe and it's been like that over the last few years. We didn't go to all the same events. But it's always awesome having the races and the free riders sort of in the bar after the event, like in Whistler, comparing notes, if you will. What you been up to?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's been a busy life. I had a pretty good little fall road tripping. Went down to the States. I did that Hall of Fame induction. Got to hang out with a bunch of buds. Did some surfing, some riding, a little bit of filming, and then went over to Rampage. And yeah, that was that was a colorful experience from recent rampages. And then went to Hawaii, and then also did a film trip in Peru.
Yeah, you've never been one to sit back, but you said colorful rampage. But I mean, you haven't been competing for a few years. Why is it colorful?
I judged this year,
Is this the
so
first time judging?
it wasn't my first time judging. I judged years ago. Probably think it was like '04 or '05. I think I judged, but yeah, a long time since I've judged, and obviously things have changed a lot. But at the bottom line is judging your friends and critiquing your friends is it's a tough job because everyone comes out at the end of the day, like hating you because you didn't judge them appropriately in their own opinion, and it was a learning experience for me actually because I don't know if you want to dive into this topic right away, but um, the biggest thing for me was, having an unbiased, really digging into every single line and having an unbiased perspective on every single line versus being a competitor all those years. As a competitor, you're so focused on your line and that's all you care about. And for a good handful of the guys, they think it's the winning line. And that's why they're there doing it, putting their life on the line. But they don't really unbiasedly look at every single other line, like top to bottom. They may be like, if there's something nearby their line, they'll look over and they'll watch it, or they'll be digging right beside it, and then they'll see the other athletes ride it, dropping, doing cliffs and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they don't pick it apart like a judge does. So like that was a big transition for me from all those years being like, okay, yeah, I kind of see that other rider's line and I had an idea what I think it should score, but I never really walked over there and looked at every single part of their line. And that's like the biggest difference from a competitor to a judge, and then post event and having everybody, have their own opinion. So that's the biggest change.
Yeah, and being a former competitor, and it hasn't been that many years, some of you must still sort of maybe itch to be there. How
100%.
hard?
I didn't want
How?
to stop.
Right, yeah, which is obviously going to be a lot of this podcast because I just am so fascinated at the mental side of that. But on the rampage, do you not? Do you still catch yourself being a bit biased if you're like, yeah, I could probably ride that, or these are guys that used to compete again? Because now you've got to wear this judge hat, but you're new to the judging hat. So is that, have you got to consciously be like, hey, I've got to be as unbiased as possible? What is this line really gonna be like on the judging side?
Well, here's the hard part is like I'll always look at a line and visualize myself riding it, and that's how I judge because um, I can still ride everything in that event. maybe a couple things I wouldn't chew off, especially with my age nowadays. But, all of that was in my wheelhouse at some point in time. So I look at it and I can visualize, okay, this is why this drop is actually really gnarly, because there's a bunch of exposure here, or coming into it, it was really tricky because you're like right along the cliff edge and you could scrape your bar and fly off that cliff. So that part of it, when I'm judging, is I put myself in that position. But the harder part is the when you are a certain type of rider, every single rider has strengths and weaknesses. So like
Yeah.
for instance, some guys are like, I don't like blind takeoffs. And then other riders are like, I'm totally fine with blind takeoffs. So that's where the unbiased, you really need to step into that. Because for me, I'm strong at some things and weak at other things. And every rider has their weaknesses throughout, like, types of terrain. So that's the tougher part, is taking that piece and saying, like, a good example would be like, you know, big step down drops, like plum drops. Like, I'm very comfortable with those, where some riders are like, oh my God, that was the gnarliest thing I've ever done in my life. Why didn't you judge that so high? But then I'm like, well, it's actually pretty easy. But that's where you have to step away and be unbiased in that position, because I'll look at something and I'll be like, yeah, this is pretty mellow. And then, like, some of my fellow judges will be like, oh my God, this is so gnarly. And I'm like, it's pretty mellow. And then that's where you got to be like, maybe I do need to take a back seat on this and rethink. God damn, earbuds. My ears are weird shape. Um, and yeah, take a step back and yeah, rethink how I'm going to score this feature or line.
And is that where the panel of judges is critically important to keep judges in check as well, right? So you're like you that I was going to ask you that exact thing. Okay, but Claw, you're pretty confident in certain things, even at your age, which you've mentioned. Like, some things are just natural. Speed to me is maybe not as gnarly as speed to you, or whatever it may be. So,
100%. You're a
so, so
racer. You're
you,
comfortable at those speeds.
yeah. So some of those things, I'll be like, oh, I might pick that off. So I might. You bring your bias in everything in life, and it's really hard to come there. But I guess the panel of judges hopefully evens it out for a fair event. Then.
Absolutely. And that's why you have the numbers there, because every person is going to have their strengths personally, and that's going to reflect upon their on the judging. So that's why it's an averaging agreement per se.
Yeah, I mean, that fascinates me. Like, you made a career in judged events, right? When you got into
I don't know
mountain biking.
how you do unjudged events.
No, but I mean, what I mean is, like, there's so many times you might have felt you did better, or vice versa. Like, the world of freeride is judged events. Over a career span and a season, I would think it's fair. But there's definitely got to be times where we can all agree, probably would have maybe put someone ahead of someone. And I'm not knocking judges. Like, I've
100%.
I've sat with the crew at some of these events, and it's a horrible job. I wouldn't want to do it myself.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Throughout my entire career, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I would have gave the win to that person today. And then I've been on the end where, like, I'm in six, where, I probably should have been closer to like second or first. So there's no athlete that goes through their career in judged event that doesn't have an experience like mine. It's just the way it goes. And the hard part is, you know, understanding and being okay with that subjective system that you're putting yourself into. And us riders, as free riders, we're voluntarily putting ourselves at the mercy of some judge. And it's like, it sucks sometimes, but and when you step back and look at the whole picture, you're like, this is the sport we're in. It's not a freaking race situation where if you cross the finish line with 1/10 of a second in front of the other one, you were the clear winner.
Yeah, but
It's the way it is.
yeah, it's an uncontrollable, isn't it? And it's like weather in downhill, but judging isn't
Hmm.
uncontrollable for an athlete. Look, you obviously put your best foot forward, and I think, like I said, I wouldn't want to do the job. I think it's come on leaps and bounds, but there's always, I guess, human error, biases, that unconscious bias that they will never even know about.
Yeah, and you touched note on something that would be a pretty, I would say, almost fair comparison with the DH scene is like, say, the half the field rode in the dry, and then all the top field rode in the wet, and there was a couple of the athletes that are top 10 riders that didn't have good seating runs, so they were in the first half, so they end up winning, and that does happen in the race scene. So like that's where it's like, oh, did he really win? Should he have would have won? But then at the same time, it's still an absolute, because it's like, hey, that's the system we're in, and that's just what
I
we got to deal with.
Yeah, and this topic's come up obviously in the bar after slopestyle or whatever. I'm almost I'm almost at the point where I would prefer placing, and I'll get to why. Is because I'm not sure if it would actually work, but the guy that drops first or near the beginning, and he has, say, a bad ranking from last year in slope or rampage, and he puts out a banger run, they can't put that thing at 97 out of 100, because they're like, shit, how many other guys are going to have better runs than that, right? So they put a number. I know the number doesn't correlate to like his placing,
It
but
means nothing.
it means nothing. But to the spectator, it sometimes means something. Like, what do you mean you gave that an 82? This guy double backflip that, and he did that, and then from there you're going to just have a level of scoring. Like the winning then could be 85 and not 95. But I wonder if it's like, dude, you're in first place. Then the next guy comes on, you're in second. And you judges, I guess,
Hmm.
have the scoring, but you maybe hide it from the spectator. But I don't even know if that's a full of shit example or a
I
suggestion.
think that needs I think that needs to happen, because even as an athlete, I used to focus so much on the score, because you're like, yeah, mid 90s, heck yeah, yeah, solid. You get like an 85, you're like, meh, all right. And then if you win with an
Yeah.
85, you're like, okay, yes. So that's why the scoring should just be for the judges, and at the very worst, be told at the end. Like it's just you're placing at best, and I felt like at Rampage, I'm going to mention it to the boys, but yeah, the team. I think there should be some emphasis on like an actual show on the judging, because there's so much controversy every single year on the judging, and I think they should do like a little mini piece before the event on educating everyone on what line is looking good and why. And then at the event, not even show the placings, just re-rack them, second run. And everyone's just like, oh, I think, because that's what it was back in the day.
What,
Like,
not tell the guy if he's at number one or not? It's like a
yeah,
blind re-rack for the second run.
something like that, because like the whole scoring thing and, people getting all bent out of shape, it kind of puts some, I don't know, negative spin on it. I definitely
Yeah.
say like maybe re-rack them with your placings, but definitely not tell people the scores on hand, because there's so much better things that come about from that. Just as a judge, you're pressured to come up with the score right away. And I was always the guy, like they were like, come on, Bearcloth, like, come on, get your score in. And I'm like, freaking hold on a second. This is important. Give me a second.
This is
I gotta
very
think about
important.
this. I'm like, okay, shifting people. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. That line can't, with his run, you can't be above him, and just like placing. And then you're like, oh crap, I got no, oh, damn it. I gotta adjust this. And it's like, it's a lot of pressure. Like,
Oh,
and it's got to be done
it's,
quick.
yeah, it is a lot of pressure, and that's why I'm like, look, like you just said, okay, but is he? He wasn't better than that guy, but he's better than that guy, and then what? He slots into fifth, right? It's like, oh, well, the number, like you said, okay, well,
Hmm.
that means he's probably an 86. It's like I didn't even get to 86, I just put him in fifth. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's always ways to like get a little bit incrementally better. I don't know about, yeah, re-racking would be cool. Like for the fans, it's great, but an event like
It
Rampage, I
is.
think you've got to be fair and say, dude, you're in first, and if no one beats your score, like we don't expect another run, because you don't want guys going hell for
Yeah,
leather
throwing their meat
yeah, throwing their meat, getting hurt on the second run, when unfortunately that's the
when
nature
they
of the
don't need
sport.
to.
If they want a glory
Yeah.
run or have a bye, yeah, go. They've earned that, man.
Absolutely. And like, I'm all for, like, glory runs, just because, you know, being in that position, you sit there and you wait. You sit there and wait, and especially if you're like a good competitor and you're there to win, which a lot of the guys are. You sit there and you're like, okay, no one beat my score, freaking glory run. And we've seen it before. Some guys throw down hammers because they're that confident on the bike, and some guys just cruise. And either or, it's amazing to have, watch someone do a glory run. And yeah, I agree with the rear rack in terms of placings. And let's be honest, how often do we get a complete second run at Rampage because of the wind? It's
No,
like,
that's a whole nother topic. There's got to be a
you
better way,
know,
man. I think, like,
yeah.
I mean, surfing, the sport of surfing survives. I don't know. I don't know the numbers. I mean, I'm hearing Rampage
hmm
numbers are off the charts. So this show's cool, but at the same time, I'm kind of, they need a weather window of days where they can just get this event done. Because what if they don't even get it done because of wind?
It's one of those things where I think that the common denominator is we got to start early, and we've done it before. We start at 8 o'clock. We get up there, you get like half an hour, 40 minutes of daylight to just do your warm up, kind of, half a run or quarter run, or just hit a couple hits on the course, and then you rack for 8 a.m.
Yeah,
because it's pretty constant that time of the year in Utah for the wind to pick up around 11:30. It's just constant katabatic winds. The cliff walls heat up and starts pulling, and it's standard. And it's only been a couple years where we've been like, at 1 o'clock, like, holy cow, freaking dead calm.
yeah. I mean, so then do they need to build more time after the digging for like a forced rest day maybe, and then a forced morning or
No,
two
it's
of
just,
practice, and then because it seems like sometimes athletes don't have enough bike time before the day, from what I can see from the outside. So maybe like
and
a
that
little bit more
depends on the
practice
course.
safety time, yeah, and like force them to have a rest day, force them to have practice, and then they can maybe start early and get it done.
Yeah, that's already built in, like the
Okay.
rest day. Like, that was back in my days when I was competing. We worked hard on figuring out a good formula for like safety and enough time to get, what you need done. And at the end of the day, it's like the more time you give, the more gnarly the build gets. Because like we're all like, just like, as athletes, we're like, more, 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 more. I want to do this. I want to do this and this and this and this. So you give people time, and like a guy like me, I'll dig right up to the freaking contest day. That's usually what ended up happening. But like, it's just the way it is. And, maybe in terms of wind, I think you just got to start early. That's just straight up.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we've jumped straight into it, which is awesome. What's it?
Straight into the meat and the potatoes.
No, let's do it, man. No fluff around here. What's it like going back there? You've spoken about the judging, but you've had
hmm
a few years to sit back, maybe reflect on your career, as well as like, okay, you still want to be there, or you realize that chapter's closed now. What's it like going back to Rampage? I've been back to World Cups, but it's 6 years now, so I have a different view as 3 years ago as I did the first year I moved on. That must be quite interesting if you could share like what that process is like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I didn't want to retire from competing. I was forced due from a neck injury. Like, I had a pocket of fluid in my spine that was from breaking my neck one of the times. And it just didn't allow me to take any more big risks. And I ended up pulling out. And now going back, yeah, it's a trip, man. You don't, it's a bittersweet thing, like sometimes you're like, oh man, we're adrenaline junkies, all of us, whether you're racer, free rider, we love the adrenaline, we're addicted to it. And, just that feeling of at the bottom of the run and you just achieving a very large goal, whether you nailed it 100% or you got 80% of it, it's a intoxicating feeling that we're all addicted to. And like that right there is like the most definitely bittersweet part. But then there's times where, the guys are guinea pigging their lines and, ragdolling and eating crap. And you're like, yeah, I definitely don't miss that part, like the sleepless nights, and, the night before the event are like, yeah, I'm pretty glad I don't have to go through that anymore. So it's a bittersweet thing for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that comes with age, and but you mentioned you weren't ready to walk away, even though you were, I mean, veteran for lack of a better term, in the sport and had accomplished some insane goals and epic movie parts and producing your own movies, and you were still gun ho. Is it? Do you think it's because it's all you knew, or you just had this hunger to still compete when you said you were forced to retire?
Yeah, like I said, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love competition. I'm not like one of those. I grew up BMX racing, and like BMX dirt jump competitions, like at a young age, and so doing a race twice a week for years on end, and then the odd jump competition, I got very comfortable with those butterflies and those nerves, such as you would with being a racer all through your Grom years, and then you get up to your pro level, and the race doesn't give you much nerves. The event, it's more of just the pressure you put on yourself because okay, I want to nail that time, I want to nail that win, and that's the only pressure. But then that pressure itself is something that you really fall in love with, and that achieving and getting that goal that you put on yourself, and all of the other elements of adrenaline just add to that experience and you become addicted to it. And that's exactly what it was for me. Like with the slope style, I realized it was, the young guns were just killing it. And I didn't have, the longevity to keep hitting the deck as hard as I was. And I decided to pull out at a good time. But then with Rampage, that's like my favorite type of riding, and I can still excel, or could have still excelled in it and been, top 10 rider. So I definitely would be, in all honesty, I'd still be riding it if I could.
You reckon so?
Yeah, definitely.
Dude, that's quite
For
gnarly
sure.
to
It's like
hear. Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm comfortable in that terrain, and it's like that's where I've spent a good portion of my career is, going in far flung deserts and being in the mountains. So yeah, it's my happy place.
I was gonna say, dude, whether you're on a boat fishing or in the woods, what, hunting or building shit, like from someone that, oh, he's come from BMX, but you went into the free ride side of it. It's not like the normal BMX side that I remember. You just, is that from where you grew up as a youngster? Like, is it just in your blood, this outdoorsman vibe?
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I did like a little bit of snowmobiling, and then like I love dirt biking. I got into moto racing before biking, and then I couldn't afford it. So like going big and being out in the mountains was always a big influence of me, especially like growing up being a snowboarder and having this big mountain terrain and just being in awe of it. And then the 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 mountain bikes got good enough that you could actually go in the mountains in certain areas like Utah. Like Josh Bender kind of showed us all what could be done. And that was just like, it was like a big old carrot stick dangling. Is like, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to ride a bike, and I want to ride bikes on mountains.
You want to
And
huck
what
off cliffs for a living?
yeah. Yeah, for lack of a better term, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's technically what you did.
It sounds funny listening to it, but yeah, 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 you're
I
right.
mean, that or spinning 360s off 30-foot wooden drops, fucking teeter totting out of trees. I'll never forget that spin at Whistler. I mean,
Yeah,
that was a bigger thing back then that put you like, there's a certain few things that happen, and then you're like, "Phew, I can only respect that. I wouldn't want to get paid to do that. That was were you like one of the early ones spinning those drops, the big drops in free ride, like free ride drops, not like smaller ones?
yeah. There was, once I started doing it a bit, some guys definitely started it. Oh, hey, what's up, Boots? It's my cat. My
If you're
cat
on
Boots.
audio, there's a cute cat that's joining the potty.
Yeah, right. But yeah, there was a couple guys that started catching on. Like Zinc, he was like the next guy, I think, that started spin drops and events and
Yeah,
whatnot.
but surely
But
you were one of the first or the first. I mean,
mhm.
I can hear you're humble about it, but unless I'm forgetting someone, which I don't think I am.
No, that was like, there was like Cowan and Timo. Those guys were doing a lot of tricks, on dirt jumps and dabbling a little bit into the big mountain stuff. But then I was like Seth Morrison was like a huge influence on me. He's a pro skier that was like the first in skiing that took, tricks and went big, and he went crazy big. Like Seth Morrison Chronicles. I think I wore that tape out of watching it so many times, because he basically, started doing backflips off like 90-foot cliffs and like cork sevs and all sorts of stuff. And I was just like, that's what I want to do on a mountain bike. I want to take my tricks that I know how to do, because I've spent years and years honing, my BMX tricks. And I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to do this on my mountain bike and take it to the hills. And that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, that's sick. I didn't know where the inspiration came from, but that makes so much sense,
Mm-hmm.
Except they're often landing in powder and you're not
Yeah,
landing in
dirt
powder.
hurts.
Dude, it
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah, there's no more. You can't really just send an 80-foot cliff right to your back and just get up and cruise
Well,
away with
Bender
no.
tried.
He did. He did try many times, and a lot of times he walked away.
He did too. Did you get to know
Amazingly
him at
enough.
all? I never
Oh yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
I
if
knew
I
him
met
well.
Bender. Well,
Yeah,
I
I knew
mean,
him well.
he's an interesting character, huh?
Very interesting character. Very colorful.
Yeah, like if you think about Rampage back in the day, and yeah, some of those videos would still go viral, but I mean, if social media was what
Oh,
it
big
was
time.
now, and he
Like the
was
jaw
doing some of
drop.
those drops.
Yeah, like remember the jaw drop? The one that it was so flat. It was like, so if anyone don't remember, it was like a solid 40 feet, like plumb drop, downhill takeoff to like no gap out, and then like flat.
So
Like
just
you look
falling
at
out
it,
the air.
just like Wile E. Coyote style. Like physics wise, like as a
Fizz.
free rider, it's always 50-50 is like going to be your best trajectory in terms of greasiest landing.
Do you guys
Like, and
actually
you
think
go,
about this shit? Hang on, hang on, hang on. There's a science to this.
there's totally a science to it.
I'm
It's
listening.
like,
Okay, I'm listening.
funny that you don't know that.
I know a
And
little
then,
bit
and
of
then,
it, but the way you said,
yeah,
like physics wise, Bender's probably not going to make this. No shit. He's not going to
yeah,
make that work. I don't need physics for that.
yeah, absolutely. So like for us, like trying to find the greasiest landing, you want to go out as much as you want to go down. That's just the general rule. And then if you go past this, like, 70-30, like 70% of your trajectory is your drop and 30 is out, your landing has to be really steep. And you go any less than that, it's got to be vertical. And then you go even less than that, which was Bender's, it's got to be almost vertical, but it was the opposite. It was like, 15% slope. So it's like you look and you're just like, how am I going to take this energy and go from here to there? But like, he almost held on to it, to his defense. He was
Did
close.
you did you ever communicate the science of that drop to him?
No, I didn't really know him at that point. I just met him a couple times, and I'd seen the drop, been pointed it out and like looked at it, and I was just like, that's why it was called the jaw drop, because you were like, what the heck?
I think it's what the fuck.
Yeah.
You're allowed to say that on the podcast. I don't think we're going to get
Absolutely.
cancelled for that.
No. Nope. Hope not.
Dude,
Yeah,
what
for sure.
how did the sport change from when you first got into it? I mean, you've had a little time now to reflect. I mean, you did almost 2
Mhm.
decades, I guess.
Yeah, I got into the sport in '01. Heavily into the
Yeah.
sport. I rode mountain bikes all growing up, and in my day as a young kid, I would go back and forth between mountain bikes and BMX, and I would get on my mountain bike and I would try to get rad, and I'd break the wheels or bend the bars, and I'd be like, okay, I don't got enough money to fix this. So I'll just go ride my BMX. And the bikes sucked back then. You can remember back in the 90s, like they couldn't withstand nearly what, like a fraction, like a trail bike right now is like probably 4 times better than like the best TH bike back then. the brakes, the suspension, the materials, everything. So like seeing and going through that transition to like, okay, back in the early 2000s, okay, now we got some good suspension, our brakes are really good, bikes are getting a little lighter, it was a lot of like the technology that spearheaded, like the jump in, you know all the cool stuff that you've seen, and like the race times getting faster, and you can't take away from like raw talent like Palmer, and some of like the early guys that really pushed that and that technology to get faster, and it was kind of like a symbiotic relationship in some ways. But at the same time, I would rely a lot of it on the technology to see some rad shit, because remember V brakes. A
I
lot of,
do. I don't know if half the listeners have ever heard of even the term, let alone ridden the shitty things.
I'm gonna go with like 70% of the listeners are probably like, V what?
Oh, we need some feedback on that one. Send some questions or some feedback if you even know what a V
Yeah.
brake is.
Yeah. All right, fans. Let us know if you know what a V brake is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the days.
So what the bikes had to get better for you to like have any faith in mountain biking, even though you wanted to do it. You just
Absolutely.
kept going
Yeah.
back to
Because
BMX because at least it would stay in one piece.
yeah, I would dibble and dabble, and I would like go out and because I was always building dirt jumps as a kid. I was a racer, but my real heart lied in creating something, and I love to dig, and I was built for it. So I would always have my jumps somewhere around the neighborhood and a couple spots, and I would always bring the mountain bike, and then I would like land flat, and bars would go, and I'd be like, okay, well, gonna have to save up on the paper route if we can get a new pair of bars. It's gonna take 8 months. So it's like, yeah, the technology wasn't there, and obviously I didn't have enough money to afford the best gear. So that also, was a bit of a part of it too.
Did you do paper route? I did paper route as a kid.
I did it all:
Oh my
paperwork,
god, the
mowing
worst paying
lawns.
job ever. At least I got semi
Oh,
fit doing it.
yep, true, very true. And my worst job was at the fish plant, cleaning fish.
I I actually I did I do a bit of research here and there, even though we know each other well. That sounds horrendous.
It was awful.
I had
I
some
stank like
jobs,
fish for like days afterwards.
dude. I mean, I was gonna say you've done well for yourself out of hard work, sacrifice, and. But you came from pretty humble beginnings, gutting and cleaning
Yeah.
fish for pocket money.
Well, that was for a plane ticket, like one of my first flights to the ABA Grands in
Oh, really?
Oklahoma. Yep.
So it was just like a holiday job or a job in the interim to get a bit of cash for this plane ticket.
Um, no, I always had like jobs off the side to like help pay for going to races and stuff. I think I was 16 at that time. Summertime, worked at the golf course, and yeah, had lots of jobs,
That's good. I
all
mean, I
shitty
think
ones.
it all shitty ones. I think it's great to hear. I don't know if some of the kids these days, I mean, if they showed talent early enough, they never even need a job to pay for bikes or get to races. Like it's kind of changing, we're investing in athletes a lot sooner than we were back then.
Absolutely. It's kind of daunting because, growing up with the beginnings that we grew up with, knowing how important that is to your development and character building, it's hard to see a kid that's like 13, 14, and now he's like, getting 100K contracts getting thrown at him in some sports. And you're like, man, like, what does that do for the kid's psyche by the time he's 18? Is he going to be like unmotivated and like over it? Or is he going to be like super keen and hungry? Because like, fat dogs don't hunt. And if you've just got given all this epicness at a young age, it's like, how do you stay motivated through your 20s and 30s to keep killing it?
No,
I always
dude.
ask myself that.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like someone like Tiger Woods, where it's just really was bred into him, and the money never was a motivating factor. You get those, but I fear the same thing as you. Whether it be pushed too hard and training too early, and then you're burnt out,
Yep.
or maybe
I've seen that in
handed
many friends.
handed it too early, too much too early, and they're not understanding work and sacrifice is active secret ingredient. Because when you're a
Hmm.
kid, you're just riding, but you're not aware that you're putting in the work hours, and you've heard of 10,000 hour rule, those sort of things. Like, I don't think you're aware of that. And then when you have your first bit of hard times and hard work's the only way to get out of it, you don't know that because you've just been, sort of gifted parts, bonuses, money, all those sort of things. And then when the results dry up, you don't realize how to get back.
Yep. It's a scary thing with the youngins. And you see it a lot in like board sports, like young surfers, young skaters, and in the ski industry too, or snowboard industry. Yeah, not as much in the mountain bike industry. I think our youngest phenom, as we all know, Jackson, he came from a really young age and he's absolutely destroying it. And he's got, just as much, if not more motivation than a lot of the other athletes. So it's like, I don't know, it's tough. I think it's very circumstantial, like case to case.
Yeah. Yeah, Jackson is a good example. He's definitely the real
Mhm.
deal, and he seems motivated with the racing. So he has probably a
100%.
competitive drive. Like, he could have gone the free ride route or movie
Hmm.
parts and stuff. So that's interesting to see him focus on the racing. Something that comes to mind, and I just want to get my thoughts out because I don't want to be judged or think I'm judging. But someone like Kyle Strait has had an incredibly
Hmm.
long career, and I think he's gone through phases of motivation. And
Big
and
time.
and and I don't blame him because he's been doing it for so long, and he was someone
Hmm.
that had so much talent and potential, and got the big contracts and won Rampage when he was a young teenager, right? um
Hmm.
and he did the racing thing, and when he raced, like, he was on the podium as a
He had
junior.
talent.
He had so much talent, but that came from how hard he rode the bike as a youngster. And then you can
Yep.
see like these dips and sort of valleys and troughs of his career, but I think it's because it was so long. But that is, he teetered on that thing of like so much
Yep.
so early. What is next for him?
Yeah, well, he's had a interesting career, and I would agree with that because back when we were athletes on Specialized, that was like, in my opinion, his laziest of days because he was relying on all the skills that he built up as a youngster. Because back then, when he was a kid, he rode all day, every day, built up those skills, and then he started getting like as a pro racer, and he just wasn't getting the results. And like I saw it in him, he wasn't really motivated because he was kind of like, well, I've been given so much, and now do I need to really work for it? And he hasn't realized that, like, momentum is a fickle thing, and you need to keep that momentum. And as soon as you stall, the back end falls away pretty quick. And that was a couple big reality checks for him when he lost a couple big sponsors, and he went through some. He had to dig deep, and find his own motivation. And thankfully, he came back swinging, and he's been killing it ever since. So
Yeah, that's probably a good way to look at it, and I think it's that old saying, like, it's easy to get to the top, but to stay there's the hard part, difficult part.
absolutely,
And for Straight, that definitely was that. He was so young, he probably wasn't even aware that there's guys outworking him, but he didn't even know that was a thing. He was just relying on riding talent. And then in racing, that's also the years when sponsors dried up and people were hungry, they're willing to risk it for a free pair of
it's true.
shoes. And he had some big contracts. I heard, so, like that 661 knee pad deal, and all these things that he earned, don't get me wrong. But it's awesome to see him sort of resurrect his career and find his niche, what he wants to focus on, because
Hmm.
racing isn't for everyone, or whatever it may be.
Absolutely, yeah, it's good to see. Yeah, because it all happened so fast for him. He was 15, like, basically, jumping in the Oakley truck. Like parents are like, "Where are you going?" We're like, we're taking him for 3 weeks. We'll be back then. And like, parents are like, well, okay, bye, Kyle. Like, be safe, sort of thing.
Yeah, good
I
point. You were there, technically mentoring
like,
him.
yeah, like
Shit.
I can't imagine being that young and like having like all of this like attention. Like he just like he exploded.
He's like
Like
a
that.
kid. He was like a kid actor, if you think about it,
Yeah,
right? And then you've
absolutely.
got
Like
to like grow and then become an adult actor if that's what you wish to do or use your skill set.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah, I've
Yeah, it
never
was
thought about that. It fucking must have been. And that's why you say you can never judge someone unless you walk a day in their shoes. And I would never do that. I
mhm.
just saw what you saw. Like he had some issues there in the middle and he came out, with flying colors because he seems super happy now and
Yeah,
uh
he's super
and
stoked.
and done some awesome stuff throughout his insanely long career actually.
Very long.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of sponsors and stuff, I saw the wording you use hanging up your Red Bull helmet.
Mhm.
So is that a mutual thing? Is that this walking away from serious competition? Like, yeah, I don't think we've chatted about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's funny how many people still say to me, "It's like, oh, happy retirement." It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I'm not retiring from biking. I'm just retiring from
Yeah,
competing.
yeah,
And then like hanging up my Red Bull helmet was another kind of like, oh, you really are retired. I'm like, no, I'm not retiring. Like, so for me, that was just like, um, a way to like step away from Red Bull on a good footing. I tried to use my words appropriately, but still some people got it confused. But that one, it was Red Bull has like basically a limit to types of athletes in every country. And in Canada, mountain biking, as we all know, is a really big focus for the brand because mountain biking is so huge in Canada. And we have like I think it was like 5 or 6 athletes, which is way more than like any other country has. I think the States might have similar, but so basically they said we need to make some room. We got some young talent coming up. Like for instance, Jackson, he needed to have a helmet, and I was taking up space in that roster. Even though that I always thought that I would just be like a lifelong, ambassador of the brand, but I guess they're switching that program to basically just chopping it off and being like, okay, you're a friend of the family. You're not cut off from any events or anything like that, and we can do stuff with you in the future. But in terms of rocking a Red Bull helmet and getting the full support, we just chop it off and make some room for the next generation, which was Jackson, which I was pretty stoked to see him, take a seat in the Rebel ranks because he is definitely deserving of it.
yeah. I mean, it is an interesting company, and it's brought up with Marcelo, and it's really helpful to have it. And I know how they support and what they've done for the sport and action sports. It's epic. I think they've sort of been at the forefront of using that space on a hat and helmet, which is super smart. And they
Yep.
were like back in the day. I had an agent that was helping me, not directly, but he would sort of consult with me and he brought it up and I was too old at the time, even though South Africa didn't even have an athlete because they go and get athletes from different regions, but they are
Mm-hmm.
someone that historically was investing in that younger generation, that they see the potential.
Absolutely.
And but then,
Yep.
like you said, you expect it to be a lifer because once you get on and you reinvent yourself and you perform, and you can sort of stay with the brand for a long time. But I think you did incredible things for them and for the career, and that led to being inducted into the Hall of Fame, right, for mountain biking. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have seen that when you were younger, right?
No,
I mean,
it's not even really. It wasn't a thing. It didn't
what does
exist.
it feel quite surreal? Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
only the
It's one
select
of those
few that.
things. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not something that's a reality or a possibility because let's be honest, the sport is really new. It's not like baseball or hockey where Hall of Fame's been around for decades, so it's not something you grow up going, oh man, I would love to be in the Hall of Fame for mountain biking. And then when the guys were chatting about it, I was just like, I don't really know if I deserve it. And then it's like, and then they explained to me, the reasoning and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, that'd be pretty cool if it did happen. And then it did, and it was like it was pretty surreal. I'll definitely.
Wicked. So explain how the conversation start or what they were, the reasoning and all that. Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about it.
Yeah, well, like, so there's lots of conversations like behind closed doors that goes on about the Hall of Fame and mountain biking. And the bottom line is, um, if you came in and you change the game, that is something that you should be recognized for, because you came in, you changed things. You just didn't win a bunch of things. It was like you changed the sport, and that's where like I what I needed to hear to kind of really grasp the concept of me being worthy. And I was like, yeah, yeah. Think back, I was like, I definitely did a bunch of things that weren't being done, and definitely, like, my goal was when I was a kid watching Seth Morrison's Chronicles of how he changed the game. I was like, that's what I wanted to do. And then, I used my skills, and I achieved, a good portion of my goals. And that's the reasoning behind it.
Where do they do it? Where's the headquarters, or where do they do this thing?
Well, it's in the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame is in Marin County, and in California, just north of San Fran. And it's a really cool museum. There's a bunch of like awesome people that dedicate a bunch of time to keeping it going. And they do the induction just kind of like in a really small venue at the actual museum, and then it's all like broadcasted, and they do a big induction ceremony, and we have a bunch of drinks and have a little bit of a celebration after. And it was really cool. It was nice.
Oh, that's wicked.
It wasn't like a red carpet affair sort of thing, but it was more down to earth, such as, in my opinion, that's how I see the mountain bike industry, is very down to earth, like welcoming type community. So I think it was great that, it really reflected that, because, mountain biking's not like your flashy red carpet, type fair. I don't know, maybe you might disagree, but that's kind of how I see, the bike industry is just, awesome.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's such a cool lifestyle industry. It's getting more corporate. I mean, the turnovers that I'm hearing of some of these companies and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but I think it's critical that we keep to some of the core values and the people in the sport. Your kids can go and it's a safe place if you become a mountain
Yep.
biker or you have mountain bike mates. I think it speaks to what you spoke of, the Hall of Fame. What's some of the coolest stuff that you see down there, like when you go down there?
Um, Definitely a lot of the old bikes, because they have like wraps around some like the very first bikes that ever were created, and then you have a bunch of like all the legends bikes in up on the thing, and they have a little picture, some descriptions, and then they have the previous inductees, a little bit of a story. Some guys were trail builders, and they helped pave the way for this entire area. And that's why they're in the Hall of Fame, and it's cool. And it's like, for me, one of the things that I said at first, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not retired. I'm like, why should I be in now? Back to the people thinking I'm retired conversation. And it was the fact that, like, what I'm being known, like, thrown in there for, I am past that part of my life, and I've moved on to being an adventure content athlete. So it did make sense. And I know I've heard from like racers and other athletes that are like, well, why am I not in the Hall of Fame? I've done this, this, and this. And it's like, well, it wouldn't make much sense to put someone into the Hall of Fame if they're still in their career. Once you kind of hang the hat up, then it's like, okay, then it's time to be recognized. That makes any
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, no, it does. I guess, yeah, if you're still competing, you've still got potential records to break and stuff like that. I guess
Absolutely.
Greg Minar's probably not in the Hall of Fame yet, right? Yeah.
And he's been a topic of conversation, because people are like, well, why is he not in there? He's freaking, look what he's done. It's undisputable.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's
it's
like
an
he's
yeah.
still smashing it. So
Yeah, he'll
yeah.
be in there one day when he decides. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll
Who
we'll
knows when he's
see.
going to decide to hang up the towel, because we all know that he could hang on to those bars a lot longer than we all think.
Yeah, he doesn't need the money, I guess, but if he had $1 for every time he comes up on the podcast, then he'd be an even richer man, that's for sure.
Yeah, he is a legend.
Between him and Palmer, man, Palmer comes up like the new school guys
Yep.
listening. Keep doing your research on that man. I shared some.
Absolutely, young bucks.
I shared some text with him, and man, it was like a surreal moment. And I've met the guy. We've hung out, but just to text him and shoot the shit about bikes, it's
Hmm.
pretty cool because that's a guy that, fuck, is he in the? He's probably not in there. Is he in there?
I think he is.
He fucking should be. I mean, if there's a guy that
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
that changed the sport of
yeah,
downhill, I think
yeah, yeah.
someone
He's in
that
there.
single-handedly changed like the look and feel and so many other things. Yeah, he better be in
Hmm.
there.
I'm pretty sure my memory's horrible. Too many freaking brain dingers, but I think it was him and Petey
Oh, okay,
that
maybe.
were
I
in
know
one year.
Cully part of your
Cully was in.
inductees.
Yeah, Cully was in this year.
Him it was
Yeah,
you, Rachel, and Cully, I think. I don't know, maybe I saw that
yeah,
article.
yeah. There was a couple more on top of us, but yeah, it was. Yeah, it's hard to remember all because like so many people come to a conversation of like who is and isn't and should be. But we leave it up to those guys in the committee to make those decisions and whatnot. But I think they're doing a great job, and it's a
Yeah,
hard job
no.
too because it's like there's not a lot of funding for it. Some bike companies kind of keep feeding things in and keeping things alive, but yeah, I think it's important to keep the history of the sport and keep that alive and re-educate all the young groms on why the technology and the sport has gone to where it is today. So it's good to keep the history flowing.
Yeah, for sure, man. Could you imagine in 10 years, kids are not even gonna understand that bikes would just break when you basically
Yeah.
looked at them, let alone ride them down a hill, man.
Yeah, flat tires and all. Who knows what technology we're gonna get with freaking all of the inserts and whatnot? But you remember how many flats we used to get?
Dude, I just hate that that's still a thing. I mean, I get a lot less, like the tires and the casings and
Yeah,
tubeless, but it's still technically a thing. Like
it
we've solved
is
a lot
for
of
sure.
problems, but we have not solved that one entirely, have we?
Yeah, no, we really haven't. I'm sure there'll be a super light insert that'll take away a bunch of it, but you never know.
Yeah, no, there's a
You
lots
never
of
know.
good ones. We've got Kush Core here at the shop. The boys have been using that, but I mean, they're not
Hmm.
bomb proof. Like
True.
it's not like a dropper post that changed how you can descend on the fly or suspension. Like we still have a tire connected to a rim, and
Hmm.
because of those aspects, you can kind of get a flat.
Absolutely. Yeah, technology. Still got a few problems to solve, especially the derailleur is another one of them. It's like that's such and crazy thing is like you look at a bike from like the early 1900s and you're like, man, nothing's changed with the derailleur and the drive system. It's like holy cow, like a Shimano derailleur from like the 80s or 90s, and you look at one today, you're like, man, minus the clutch, nothing's really changed.
It's like got better,
It's
but
still the
it's
same
stayed the
design.
same. That's actually
Exactly.
crazy. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember looking at one of the bikes being like, what year was that? And you look at another bike, you're like, man, the derailleurs have not changed much. It's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're literally stranded. We had it the other day. Like, we went on this dealer ride and someone smashed a crank into a rock that bent. And then from there, they were like, we think the chain ring's bent. I'm like, yeah, we'll be fine. I offered to ride the bike back. Literally took one pedal stroke, snapped the chain, and my brother had to tow me back, dude. And I was like,
Oh,
"What?"
fun.
And this is on an e-bike, right? So you're like,
Oh, wow.
we've solved this whole issue. Like we can get anyone out on the mountain and go for a long ass
Yeah.
ride, and
And
I
then
still had to
still
push
down
the
to a
thing
chain.
back down to a chain or a flat
Damn.
tire, right?
Yeah. Fuck.
It's
It's
so
pretty wild.
pretty well. But you've mentioned a few times, I'm not retired. Everyone thinks I'm
Yep.
retired. The bear claw
I'm still
doesn't.
giving her.
The claw doesn't retire. We've heard it here. Talk to me.
Well,
Talk to me.
I
What's the
will retire.
motivation? What you up to?
Right now, I'm based I put my hat on an adventure content guy. Like for instance, we just did this insane trip to Peru. Myself. Kenny Smith, Georgia Astle, and Cami Noguera. We all went to the Andes in Peru and did this insanely hard trip. It was 6 days, and the whole goal was to do a sequel to a Chasing the Inca that I did years ago. It was on Red Bull TV, and yeah, looking for this lost Incan road, and we found it. We were able to get really good weather, and we summited the pass, dropped down in, and we did like another like 5 or 6 big passes. So we topped out at 15,500 feet, dropping down to valleys about 6 or 7,000 feet, and kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was one of those trips that was insanely hard but gratifying, and that's the type of content that I'm chasing, is just like the adventure style stuff. So still working for a couple good brands, and punching out content for various media outlets is kind of my that's my shtick nowadays.
Your jam. And you're obviously taking a
hmm
filmer along, or you self-filming on like this crazy adventure trip like that one?
We do both. We all got GoPros rolling. I ride for a drone company, Skydio, that like follows me, so I put it up, and then we also have a photographer and a filmer that's doing the whole thing, and then bring all the content back and slap her together, and hopefully we got a good story on our hands.
And I remember chatting to you and seeing in some of the videos, like you're out there with Google Maps planning. You're like, this adventure thing is seriously in your blood. So you do a lot of the planning and logistics of these trips as well. Like back in the day when you were doing that film you spoke about, and even these things now, you get pretty much hands on, huh?
Yeah, you kind of have to. It's one of those things where like no one's gonna. Well, sometimes things fall in your lap, but a lot of times you got to go out there and search for your own adventure. And especially in the action sports space, there's not a lot of new ideas. So you got to kind of think outside the box and try to find an angle that's going to be a little bit different than just, oh, we're just going out with some buddies and going ride some bike trips. You're like, okay, how many times has that been done, and how interesting is that to watch? So you want to find something sort of a unique angle, and that kind of ties people in, it gets people's interest up. So to be able to, you know, it's insane how Google Earth has transformed,
Yeah.
adventure trips. Like I've literally looked on Google Earth and been like, oh, look at that ridge line, and it looks like there's a sick drop right there. Oh, like it looks like 30 feet maybe, and then like a good run out. And like literally, I'll go to that country far flung place, and I'll go to that exact spot, and I'll be like, whoa, dude, it totally lines up and it works. And then we'll hit it. And it's like, I found that drop on Google Earth from my freaking computer in Canada, and I went to China, and I wrote it. It's like, it blows my mind that you can do that. So it's like that's changed the game big time.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty gratifying, right? Just coming up with that and
hmm
like, I think it's going to work. And then you try get the
Fuck
funding,
yeah.
or you self-fund it to get out there, take the risk.
hmm
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
all of the above. Like for instance, our very first China trip, like I got the funding for it, and actually Todd Barber was with us because we were searching for, it's kind of like a 50-50 trip. We were searching for a new Rampage site, but at the same time, um, I convinced Westerland to send a filmer, and it was actually Jeremy Grant with the 16 mil Bolex that came along. It was that long ago to our first
What,
China trip.
dude? What's the craziest trip you've been on, like film trip? Because you've been in from back in the day before it was a formalized film industry to now where it's pretty big budgets to get a film going these days.
Yeah, I've been on all sort. Like for instance, this trip that I did to Peru, it was really small budget, and then like for instance, far end of the spectrum would be North of Nightfall, where we basically went to the North Pole and brought a whole team. Um, that one was by far the gnarliest trip I've been on
What,
in terms
the
of
the
like,
North Pole?
yeah, the North of Nightfall trip, because it was just so intensive to get us in our like gear up there. It was just so much logistics. It was mind boggling how much it took to get it all done and wrapped. And at the same time, it was still an experiment, because like you can Google Earth as much as you want, but the biggest deciding factor on whether it's going to be good or rideable at all is how soft the dirt is. And sometimes we've gotten to places and be like, this is unrideable. It looks insane and amazing, but it's just like dinner plates on dinner plates, like shale. And it's just, you can't slow down, you can't dig in, and you get skunked. So like even that trip was still a big gamble. And
Did
it's
no
like,
one
man, to
was
like,
no one on the ground there, like giving you feedback? Has no one been there? Like what? How much intel did you have?
well, we originally, me and Zinc, we went a year before and we scouted. And when I say scout, we like landed with this crazy twin otter plane, and we got out and we hiked around a couple spots, and we deemed that there was some rideable terrain, and it was like enough there that we still had to throw a gamble that we were confident that we could get some really good terrain out of it, because like we didn't have the time or the means to really hike around to like all the spots, but we just kind of picked one or two that was really close to where we could land. And we actually got stuck in the plane once in mud. That was the first for me. And I was like, I'll never forget saying to the pilot, I was like, because he's basically got this twin otter prop plane, and when he goes like this with the throttle, he's basically like spinning the props, like going forward and back, forward and back. And I asked him, I was like, how much fuel you got? He's like, well, I got about 3 or 4 more gives with the throttle to try to get us out of here, and then we're done. I'm like, what do you mean done? He's like, well, we're gonna have to wait for someone to come pick us up. I'm like, wait a minute, you like calculate your fuel down to like that, like minuscule amounts? He's like, yeah, as bush pilots, that's how we do it, because you don't want to pack too much, and obviously don't want to pack too little. And I was like, holy cow, okay, well, we better freaking start digging. And so we got out there with the shovels, and we got rocks and like put pads so that the wheels could get up out of because they were stunk in the mud, like fully wedged in the mud. And like, and the X factor was like, okay, well, how long is it going to take for someone to get here? He's like, about 2.5 days at best.
Did
And
you in
we
the
like
North
we were out,
Pole?
yeah, we were in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It's freezing, and like we brought like a lunch for like a sandwich and a little bit of water and everything. So I'm like, man, this could be, it's turned into a movie here pretty quick, just this experience, if we don't get unstuck. And sure enough, we prepped it all, and we ended up getting out and yeah, saved the day and touched down back at the base with maybe a couple ounces of fuel left in the tank.
How
So
do
yeah,
you
we
even
went.
get there? Where do you fly and shit to get to the North Pole?
Oh man, it's intense. Like we basically fly to the east coast of Canada, and then from there the planes get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you're basically up into like the north, where it's like really north. And then it goes from like a little tiny airport with like not even a building, to like the next place where we landed, which was a weather station. It was called Eureka, just off of Axel Heiberg Island, and it's the furthest northern weather station on the planet. And sort of like, because once you get up into the like the polar circle, it's all pretty close, like Greenland and Iceland. It's not very far, as the crow flies.
No shit. So you almost get stuck there. But you say a year later, yeah. That was
Hmm.
Was Clay one of the filmers? I think this was like the heavy
Hmm.
production that Red Bull
Yeah.
kicked up for, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. We had all the toys out there, and we had some of the best guys. We had the young guns like Tom Van Steenbergen and Carson Storch, and then me and Zink, bit of the veterans, kind of showing the young guns the way.
No shit, man. And
Hmm.
looking back now, is there anything you would have changed in your career? I mean, I know you seem
Um,
like a no regrets kind of guy, but it's kind of a fascinating, thought provoking question because, you know.
you know what? It's an easy one for me. Health. Like, I'm 41 now, and I heal faster than I did in my 20s.
Oh, yeah, we
You
have.
may
We've spent some time
like,
at the bar having
yeah,
beers, talking about health.
yeah. Pour me another one.
Yeah. I'll fix this
Jaeger bombs,
tomorrow.
let's go.
I'll fix this tomorrow with my incredible supplement and health regime.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for instance, when I was 29-ish, my body was falling apart and I was, getting injured. It was taking forever to come back and heal. And I just felt like my body was just going downhill fast. And then I ended up starting training with a friend of mine, Gray Beal, owns a gym here. He's been trying to get me in for years. And then finally I was like, okay, let's get me in there. I've been a pro athlete for almost 10 years now, and I need to get serious with this because my body's falling apart. And it seems to happen with like a lot of guys in their like 30s where you kind of have a shift of like, okay, things are changing. I need to smarten up here and really, especially if you want to be active and have, you put demands on your body. So I didn't know a thing about health to the point where I didn't even know what an alkaline diet is or what it does for your body. Like that's how uneducated I was on health. And the reason I say, why would I have changed with my career? Because if I would have known at like 18, what foods to actually eat and how to train, I would have been unstoppable throughout like my prime years. And my injuries would have lasted like half. I would have, had the strength to not get injured as much, and I just wouldn't have been able to crush it. Would have been different for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot more like education coming out on health and nutrition, I think, just for the
And brain
general
injuries too.
general public. Well, brain injuries, yeah, that's a hot ass topic. But we didn't know
Mm-hmm.
back then, did we? It was just be a
No.
tough guy and move on.
Yeah,
Stop
you look
crying
at your
about it
buddy,
and move on.
oh, you look okay. Yeah, let's go back up. Let's hit another run. Like, let's see your
Dude,
helmet.
you
Fix your
must
visor.
you guys must have done some stupid ass shit looking back, hey?
Oh,
I mean, it's
oh
just
my
unfortunate. I
goodness.
know we're joking about it. It's a serious topic, but especially the free
Yeah.
ride scene and you guys progressing the sport and you don't land those tricks first go, man. It sometimes takes a
No.
couple tries, a lot of
A lot of
tries.
big, a lot of big head smacks in the past, and yeah, you just get back up, and whether it's like you get back up that moment and keep her going, or you like ride tomorrow, or now you would never, after a big head impact, you would never ride the next day. Like just we know enough to know that you're going to have to sit out for a couple of weeks at the very minimum with a good head injury. Whereas like, we have a big crash, break your helmet, get a new helmet, next day out there, you're giving her again. And it's sad because, it's like our brains are such a fickle thing, and you can't mess around with brains. And, in 20 years, we're going to know so much more. And the more we know, the more scarier it is. I don't know how you feel, but me, it's like every time I read a new article on a study, it's like, oof, like that's not good. And I'm like, that's why my memory's so shit. And I actually took quite a few months and did this therapy called lens neurofeedback therapy. There was a shrink in Whistler that did this type of therapy. Have you heard of it?
No. Tell me. I mean,
Okay, so
I think about this shit all the time. I don't know what the next 5-10 years looks like. I felt like I was
mhm.
somewhat smart, but then again, we had less education back then, for sure.
True. So lens neurofeedback therapy is basically working on head injuries, and they basically take your head and they hook up a bunch of micro electrodes and do like micro stim pulse to like map your brain. Basically, when you do like a muscle stim, when you like come out of a cast and they set up these little electrodes and they make your muscles jump. It's like this, but very, very minuscule amounts. And so they can map your brain and see what's responding in terms of certain areas. And for me, I think I was like 40 something sites that were not responding. And, I was like, okay, so what does that mean? Is that good? Is it bad? So I'm like, am I smart, dumb? What are we dealing with here? So he said that like, a normal like adult that's had a little bit of like, injuries and whatnot would be around 15. So it's pretty high. So I was like, okay, let's make a plan and see what we can do to address this and fix this. And so over the months, I went in and did this therapy, and we got the sites down to like 20, and he was really happy with the progress, and so was I. And I definitely felt, the difference, and it made it change. And that, was obviously from a lifelong career of hitting my head and having those types of injuries. But the craziest thing that I learned from that was, you take two brains. One brain, an emotionally abused child, never been concussed. Now they're 30 years old. You take a hockey player kid, been in fights, lots of concussions, 30-year-old brain. Those brains look the same.
Fuck off,
That to
really?
me, yes, that to me was the biggest, like, okay, how? And he
How did he
explained to me, he's
explain
like,
it? Yeah.
the emotional trauma stunts the brain in the similar fashion that a concussion. And I still have troubles understanding that ends the same result, because you beat something up, you're like, okay, yeah, this is going to be affected, but you have emotional trauma. It doesn't really compute with me, but it like, you explained it to me, so I have to believe him. And I've read other studies and papers that have the same findings, and it's pretty fascinating. And it just makes so much more sense on, like, like the bullying, and just kids, especially younger adolescents, not going through gnarly stuff, and really taking a different approach, because I have a 6-year-old child too. So it's like, it makes it more real in terms of your upbringing, and how important it is that they have a nice safe place to grow up in, and not have emotional trauma, especially in the younger years.
Well, I mean, that I understood a lot on is, you sort of, before you're the age of 4 or 5 or whatever the number is, you've developed, and sometimes you've developed to the point that these are things that you will have trauma in later in life. And I thought that was emotionally, but maybe there's a scientific sort of connection with the brain and how it develops, and thus you can't deal with stuff in the future. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just sort of regurgitating what you're saying, but I know that how important like your upbringing is, and even nonverbal stuff when you're a kid, like that. I've read into a lot of that science, but how crazy is that it actually physically affects the brain and then stunts your growth for for a long time of your life? That's fucking nuts.
So nuts. Like, yeah, it's like, it's crazy, because kids are hard to raise and whatnot, and everyone gets frustrated with their kids, and like, and knowing that, it's just like, okay, don't yell at your kid, like, raise your voice. It's that much more important to me when you know that.
Yeah, no,
It's
that's
pretty wild.
so scary. But I mean, the concussion topic comes up a lot, and like you said, there's more and more knowledge, and it is scary. But you've got to face it, right? And but there's so many things, and I think, as an athlete or someone that goes through hard times, I think that without being a doctor, I think that's really good for you. I think being able to get up again, and not hit your head and get up and go again, but fail,
Yeah.
fail again, fail. You learn how to adapt. You learn to learn new things. Okay, I even in cycling, or okay, I tried the bar spin and it didn't work this way. And I think if you sit with it, your brain figures out a way. And when you get older, I think there are ways to, even if you go and do these tests, I think there's ways to sort of use your brain in another way, um, and get better, and help with memory. Like you say, oh, my memory shit. Well, I think, there's factually ways if you learn a new task in an elder age. So
Hmm.
not do a difficult task that you know how to do. Go and learn a new skill. You're forcing your brain to make new sort of pathways, and through that you
Hmm.
can help with longevity of the brain and memory, and all these things. And socially is key. So having friends, having a good time, sleep, and what you said, diet, and then losing a new
Yep.
and learning a new skill. Those four things together, I've done a lot of research on Alzheimer's and
And
the concussion and
nose
stuff like
breathing.
that. Nose breathing. It's good or bad?
Yeah,
Good.
it's amazing.
Well, then I'm screwed,
Yeah.
dude. I mouth breathe way too much.
Yeah, I just finished a really good book. It's called Breathe, and
I
he's
think I've heard of
all
it.
about
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
it's
heard
like
of it.
highly
Good.
recommend digging into that. Oh, it's amazing because like it's so hard to like shift to from especially when I'm training. Like for instance, I was at 15,000 feet trying to nose breathe, like trying to get as much oxygen as I could, and it was really a struggle. So it takes a lot of practice to get to that stage where you need to be, and just all the data and the research behind nose breathing and what it can do for your sport, mental, like fighting sickness, all the above. I highly recommend it. I won't go too deep
No,
into it,
no, I'm
but
definitely gonna make note of it. And with this therapy, are you doing anything? Are you just sitting there and he's got the machine on you that's stimulating blood flow and stuff, or how does it work, or how did he explain it?
there's several different types of ways to do it. Some of it uses the electrodes on your head, and you use visual stimulation with like a screen and some dots and some weird stuff going on. But for my therapy, we just use the muscle stim. So I just basically sat there and hooked up for 45 minutes and just let it rip. It's pretty wild.
And are you going to go back, or are you both at like a comfortable level that you say, look, we've got you to a good
At a
normal
comfortable.
level? Yeah.
Yeah, like I walked away being happy that like I got to a certain place within my therapy that I felt good, and yeah, it definitely helped in many ways. And there's a lot of us that need it. Different therapies out there, and I've even heard of like some downhill racers that top level racers that do like your simple arms out test, palms up, close your eyes, go like this, and they can't stand because of concussions. And it's like there's a lot of us out there that need some love in terms of fixing some previous injuries.
Oh, for sure. I went back after a concussion riddled season, or one big one actually in Whistler.
Hmm.
And then I sat out, consulted doctors, and sat out another race because I just had some symptoms. And then I raced the last one, and I went back for an issue on my ankle. And this doctor was quite holistic. I think he practiced, he was a chiro and some other stuff. He's very holistic, and he did some vision tests with me because I mentioned the crash, and he fixed the ankle, and he said, "What else?" I said, "Oh well, I just came back from concussion," and he did this test, and then he did a few things in releasing the neck, and I could quickly see that my eyesight was affected negatively before,
Hmm.
then positively afterwards. And if I hadn't gone to him, I might not have even got the adjustment in my neck, which released something which helped with like lingering things. So yeah,
Blood
dude,
flow.
yeah, blood flow, and I mean whether it's us at a professional level or people listening, I mean we all hit the deck, or even sitting in a
Hmm.
desk for too long, like you need to go
Horrible.
get looked at, you need to get adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of good studies and lots of good people out there that are willing to help, and you got to take the first step with health. That's one thing. Like a lot of people are like, oh, how do I do this and this and that? It's like the first step is yours. You need to take that first step. And I can tell you anything I want, you can listen to anything you want, but until you physically take that step and move forward, you ain't going nowhere.
But do you think sometimes you need this sort of event in your life, or a wake up slap in the face?
Unfortunately for a lot of us, yes.
Like
For
including you
me,
and
like,
I?
yeah, like I wouldn't have probably, if things were just went along, I wouldn't have stepped into this whole different health holistic world. Um, my body's falling apart. My career wouldn't be, I wouldn't be here riding mountain bikes still if I didn't go down that road. So it's literally cut and dry.
Yeah, so sometimes, unfortunately, it's an event happening to you or around you. Timo, you mentioned Timo. He went through a
Yep.
similar thing, man. He had to go on a
Yep.
journey.
He's a
Um,
yoga master now.
yeah, and he had to go on this journey because they were forcing pills down his throat and threatening
Yep.
operations. And he said, "No ways. There's got to be another way." And there is
Hmm.
another way. Just because the mainstream media is punting pills and that easy fix, there's this funny meme, and there's two counters, and the one on the left is a pill, and there's a long queue, and the one on the right is lifestyle change, and there's no queue. Everyone just wants everyone just wants the give me the quick fix. Give me the
Oh
easy
man,
quick fix.
I just watched a docu on Xanax last night. Yeah, exact same thing. It's like, give me the pill. Okay. No, the only pills
But
I take are made from plants. Lots of
but
plants.
it's just unfortunate. It's just the way the world's going. It's the easy fix, and it's the you don't feel good, try this pill. Oh, we didn't get it quite right, try this. But like, where's the root cause? And I'm not saying people don't have genetic issues or whatever. But there's I think there's always another way to look at things. There's always hopefully an holistic way. Be that through health, be that through exercise, like basic things.
Exercise, key. We're so biased because we're just naturally active people, like yourself and myself and many other mountain bikers that love the sport. Like, we just need the adrenaline. We need our blood flow. And what's crazy on that topic is, it's no stranger that I've dealt with a lot of loss in my life. And after Jordy passed, I was seeing this woman for this therapy called EDMR therapy. And essentially what that therapy is she brings you back to whatever traumatic event that you're in there to help solve. And for me, it was, losing my friend Jordy. And she takes you back to that moment. She takes an object and she goes, okay, I'll focus on this object for 30 seconds. Let your mind wander wherever it needs to go. Goes back and forth. You focus your eyes on it. Your eyes are going back and forth. You're thinking about whatever it is you're thinking. And then she says, okay, where'd your mind go? And for me, a lot of times, my mom would be like, squirrel, went over here. She'd be like, okay, come on back. Come on, get back to the spot. And then she'd bring me back into it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm digging in. I'm churning through my emotions. My eyes going like this. I'm working on my emotions. And she described to me is that what that's physically doing is bringing all these emotions to the surface. You're focusing on them. You're letting your body experience those same feelings, whether you're sweaty palms, height of heart rate, all the above, and you're churning through those emotions because they're at the surface, and the eyes going back and forth helps the body and mind essentially churn up those emotions and break them down into smaller pieces so that you can absorb and deal with them. And that's what the therapy is essentially for. And when I first came in, when I told her that I needed to always just go ride my bike, when shit hit the fan, I just needed to get out and ride my bike. And I've always known that as a human being, that when I'm feeling, harsh and down, I just need to ride my bike. And she's like, aha, I'm going to get to this in a minute. And then she later on explained to me, the reason that you are drawn to just go ride your bike, and this, is because what I'm doing here is very similar to what you're doing when you're riding your bike. You're out there, your emotions are there, they're at the top of your mind, and you're riding down the trail and your eyes are going like this, reading the trail. It's very similar to what she's doing in the EDMR therapy. So bikes are good for you. So get out and ride your bike.
There you have it. Put a bow in it. Fuck, that's
Right?
fascinating. No, because it is a form of meditation. Whether it's linked to that or not, I think that's a little different. But also, when you're riding fast, or you can't think about other stresses. You can't think about the emails. If you're doing riding and mountain biking properly in nature, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Blood flowing, number two, but also doing it properly, pushing yourself. If I could push myself to my uncomfortable level, I am not
Mm-hmm.
thinking about a tax return. I'm not thinking about my next question in a podcast or who's going to be the next guest. So there's a form of
But
meditation to it, don't you think?
I totally agree with you. And I find there's two types of mentality when you're out riding. There's one when you are in the zone and you're pushing yourself at your limit, and you're right, you're tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And it's this, because anything comes in, you're fucking pink, you're off the bike. And I still think that like when there's serious trauma and emotions going on, like a recent death, and you get into that state, I still think you're churning through the emotions because they're there. It's not like a conscious thought. It's like a feeling of just loss and grief. But and then you focus your attention to the task at hand, but you're still grinding through the emotions. And then there's the casual trail ride. That's when you're climbing up the trail, you're just cruising. You're not like at your race speed or even close to your race speed. And that's when you can let, and now that I know this, I do let those emotions into my mind and come to the forefront because I know that it's really good for me to like not just look at the mountains and see how pretty things are, to like really think about my emotions and grind through them while I'm, just cruising.
Yeah, but the way you describe that, I'm thinking, yeah, you could ride fast, the first type of riding, but I think there's a blockage. I don't think you'll
You
ride to your
think, hey?
potential. I think there's a blockage. I don't know. You have to be, I mean, that's when you suppress your emotions. You could probably carry on the race season, get the results, block it out. But I think if you don't address it, you're going to have some sort of blow up at the end of the season or after the ride
Always.
because it's sitting there, right? And like you said, if you give
Hmm.
yourself the space to think about it on a ride or go to therapy, which I think is incredibly healthy, whether you are going through difficult times or not. I couldn't speak high enough about therapy. If you find someone that works for you, um, yeah, I just think you'd have a blockage. I spoke to Danny at
Mm.
Worlds. He was going through some stuff. And I was like, dude, you got to be easy. You just got to go easy on yourself. Like you fighting through the trauma you've been going through on a personal level, it's very hard to perform at your utmost best, whether you think you blocked it out or not. I just don't think it's as easy if you've gone through some
Yeah,
serious
like,
trauma.
yeah, I think I agree with you on that
Unless
in
you like
terms
use
of,
it for some serious motivation and drive, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't think you will be able to achieve your best. And I agree with you there. But I still think that if you're out riding and giving her your all, and there's that grief and trauma, I still think it's doing some good. Of like it's helping you churn through some emotions and get the endorphins up and be able to get further along in your therapy in amongst yourself versus, I think, the trail riding is going to do more good just because my experience and just going through my journeys that I've been through emotionally. um, but I agree with you on the fact that, if you have some serious trauma and grief that you're dealing on it on the forefront of your mind all day every day, you're not going to be able to perform like your best. There's no way.
Yeah, that's why it's like there's so much more to performance than on the day. There's so much in the background, which it fascinates me. But I mean, you
Big
you
time.
you brought, you brought up Geordie. What an incredible character, and he was a dear friend to you. And um,
Hmm.
what what prompted you to go for uh, to go and get counseling? Were you sort of things coming to light in your everyday life? Did you have a wake up call? Did someone say, "Hey, I think you need to deal with this. You're not dealing with life"?
For me, I've always looked at therapy as an oil change. And, I started seeing therapists like, for sports and just, trying to get an upper hand, an upper edge on, my mindset. And ever since I've always just, you know, like to go to therapy. And, sometimes it's nice to just, bounce some ideas off someone's head. And unfortunately, I've gone through a ton of trauma, lost a lot of friends throughout my years and family members and whatnot. So it's something that I don't look down upon at all. And like yourself, I think it's very healthy. And a buddy of mine, I had not heard of EDMR therapy. He was actually like a backcountry mountain rescue guy. So whenever he goes and does like a gnarly, like, a lot of times it's a body rescue, he'll be traumatized. And he's like, man, I do this twice a year sometimes when I've had a bunch of, gnarly experiences. And I just do this on the regular. It's just part of my program. And I'm like, EDMR, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'll give it a try. So I did. And I started going and yeah, I definitely think it definitely helps because after you've gone through so many traumas, you understand the process. So you, like from the outside, people will look at you and be like, "Oh wow, you're dealing with this pretty well." And for me, it's like, I've dealt with it so many times. I understand that, day one, it's going to feel like this. Day two, it's going to feel like this. Month three, it's going to feel like this. Month six, it's going to feel like this. So it's unfortunately that I've been through the process and I understand it, which helps you get through it, I think, quicker, to be honest.
And how do you look back on knowing someone like Geordie? So I lost my dad, and I try and look at it with gratitude. Obviously, there's milestones I would have loved
Hmm.
him to still be here, but I have gratitude that I spent 32 years. I think, yeah, it was 32 maybe. And luckily I got 32 years. Some people have lost parents younger, so I'm no special
Yeah.
snowflake. But I look at the lessons he taught me and try sort of make him proud now. And someone like Geordie seemed to live life like to the utmost fullest. Is that something that still
Yeah.
sits with you to this day?
Absolutely. Just his character rubbed off on everyone, He was
Yeah.
a happy, fun loving, and I'm pretty sure most people will remember him most by his cackle, that awesome laugh that he had. So it was, yeah, it was awesome being able to, grow up with the kid and spend all the times. And, like a lot of the places I ride and dig, and, it's where we grew up, like he grew up not far from here, like 2 kilometers as a stone throws from where I live. So a lot of the places that, we ride and all the trails that we built together, it's, in me, he lives on every day because a lot of the things that I do, he had an influence on me, and I had an influence on him. And it was really cool growing up in a small town with nothing but friends with bikes. So it was pretty
Do you f-
special.
do you find with loss and when you're grieving, some people are sort of too scared to speak about the elephant in the room, even though that's often what you're happy to speak about, or it helps? Because I know it helps, right? But some people might not
Hmm.
want to bring up a tough topic like that, certainly in the beginning, worried to bring sadness in the room or
Yeah,
whatever it may be. But maybe someone like you who's been through it so often, it's actually better when they just ask. I want to talk about it. I want to relive some of these things.
yeah, it's a personal thing, and everyone handles it differently. And me, I've I believe in bringing those feelings to the surface more often than pushing them down. So I'm never really afraid to bring up someone's memory, or laugh at something that person did or mention it. And everyone, say if you have like 5 friends that we're all friends with, in this instance, Jordy, if you bring up a couple memories sitting down having some beers, every single person will have a different demeanor and mood. And because like some guys will be like, man, I haven't really talked about Jordy at all, like to
Mm.
anyone. And like for instance, I have some friends that were friends of lost individuals that are like, you bring up that person's name and they're just like deer in the headlights, and you're like, man, you got to deal with this. So it's, like yourself, I believe, bringing up the conversation is better than and shoving it down, because you get to relive, that person's memories and bring it up and remember it, because it's, great memories. It sucks that the individual's gone, but there's no reason that you shouldn't be, celebrating all those fun times that you had with that person.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. Everyone's different, right? They deal with grief a little bit differently. So I guess you got to read the room and stuff. But I think people's default is to
Mm,
not talk about it or bring it up. And
human nature.
yeah, reading a bit of literature on it, it's almost mostly the opposite, that people are maybe wanting to speak about it or more open than you think, or at least check in with them. Would you like to speak about it?
Hmm.
And we're getting deep out here, but I mean, it's part of life. I mean, it's
Yeah, loss is
unfortunately
life.
loss is life, and we were in a sport that is a dangerous sport, whether it's a freak accident or not. With the late Stevie and Geordie, I just think their legacy should live on through the stories.
Absolutely. They were both such charismatic characters that, everyone has an amazing story with those individuals. And, to not talk about it, I think would be a shame, really.
Yeah, fucking hell, the stories I have with Stevie and Geordie. But you're right, like it's often the most charismatic ones, often taken a little bit too
Yeah.
early, if you ask
Yeah.
me. But that gives us joy just even saying their names out loud.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty crazy that, there's been such a big gap with like legends, in our sport being lost and, and having two monumental legends in our sport being lost in such a short period of time. Like when was the last, in career individual that we lost in mountain biking, like
I, I,
before
d-
Stevie?
I don't want to comment if I just have insensitively not brought someone up I should, but in downhill, she's at the height of their career and that young, and then another Canadian, Geordie, still active in the freeride side.
Hmm.
I don't know.
I can't even
I say
think.
it with as sensitive as I can be, and someone can let me know.
Or
Huh.
maybe we're just drawing a blank here, but like I can't
Well, we have
remember.
hit our heads, so we have that excuse.
Yeah, I'm going on that excuse.
You're only running at
But
80% capacity. You heard it here.
yeah, so back to my point, like that's, go for like such a long period where, people get hurt, but we hadn't lost anyone in the industry, that's active and in the media's eye present, in so many years. Then having two guys like that go down, it's a pretty hard hit.
Yes. Oh, I won't forget it in a hurry. It was a pretty surreal moment
Hmm.
hearing the news. But trail building for you is something you've always done, right? So it's kind of fitting because you're sort of doing a lot more of that now, and under the Geordie Lynn Parks or whatever you guys are calling it to honor him.
Yeah, well, like me and Jordy, we grew up digging. His old man had an excavator, Brian, and then I've always had machines, and we were always digging, building stuff. And probably about 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, Jordy was in a bit of a lull in his career. He wasn't quite as motivated as he got when he started doing the Rough as Fuck series. And I said to him, I was like, man, you know what? Like, you got a couple holes in your schedule. Let's make a build bike park building company, and then you can run my machines. We'll just keep you rolling, and like it'll eventually be something that you and I do later on in our careers, because we both knew that that's going to be available for us, because as a builder, those are skills that are very needed in the industry, and you just can't have enough guys out there nowadays, it seems. So we started the company. We did a couple little projects, a couple gigs here and there, and then we kind of slacked off on it a little bit, just because he was getting super motivated with the Rough as Fuck series, and his career was starting to have like a serious surge again. So he was super keen and motivated. So we kind of backed off of it as my career was, pretty steady at the same time. We didn't have a lot of time for this. And then unfortunately, when Jordy passed, I was thinking of just folding the corporation. And then Bonnie, his mom, was like, you know what? We want you to build this park through the corp name. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yeah, I would be really happy." And I said to her, "I was like, as would I. I just didn't know, because you're in charge of all the finances and stuff now." So we ended up pushing through with it, and ever since I've been pretty full tilt on building trails and bike parks, and it kind of like pushed me a little bit more to to get some employees, get a few more machines, and get going on that side of things. And yeah, it's been good.
A-
I love building, so it's easy.
And you've kept the name right after chatting to the
Yep.
family and that. Yeah,
Yep.
that would
JD
keep you
Parks.
that would keep you motivated. I think that's really cool that you're able to do that. I guess you can't slack off. You got the name there, and he wouldn't want that, would he?
Nope. Definitely wouldn't.
So is that like what are you spending most of your time doing? Like, are you splitting it with riding
Um,
and that, or how do you plan your days and months?
yeah, well, like the off season, I always try to do some big, warm trips. warm weather trips. And then in the summertime, it all depends. Sometimes I have, quite a bit of a workload with building trail. And then sometimes I have like a good crew comes in and kind of relieves me. And then I can kind of just manage everything. And that's where, I like to do like a split, a couple of days a week on the machines, and then, go out and ride and film, head to Whistler for the weekend or something for 4 or 5 days, and then come back and then relieve them. So it's kind of a split for sure. But I could definitely see myself getting a few more employees and going a little bit bigger with it, just because there's a lot of demand for trails. A lot of the municipalities are finally waking up and seeing, the ROI with mountain bikes and what it can do for tourism and the community and health and all that stuff. So it's really cool to see. How's it in your neck of the woods for that?
Yeah, it's insane. It's actually just crazy to see from one of the few kids that rode at high school that everyone thought I was a BMXer or something to now it's mountain biking is a school sport. There are literally all
It's so
my
weird.
like it's just weird. And I helped with this bike park behind the shop, and then there's another one in our hometown. There's a club. I mean, we mountain biking, it's like every second private wine farm wants trails to bring mountain bikers to the wineries. And then there's an awesome guy that's done very well for himself, that's a former banker, and he's got a big piece of land, and he decides he wants a full-time trail builder, and he allows us to ride.
Wow.
Like trail riding and trail building is a full-time career here. I know multiple people, and that's their career just in my region at home. Some
Man, that's
incredible
so
world class trail
amazing.
builders. Yeah, it's actually nuts. I mean, I did it for a little bit, and then I realized I was too busy with other stuff, and it wasn't maybe a full passion, or at least at this time in my life. But I was doing it at a stage, and I was like, yeah, I get this. You're out in nature, you're using your hands, you're being creative. It's hard work, and then you build these awesome things for people to ride. Like it's pretty fulfilling.
It's therapy in itself, the actual act of trail building. And then, like you say, you get to see the joy it brings to yourself and everyone else. It's very gratifying.
Yeah, man, we did this Scott Dealer event, and one of the days was out on a private farm. Incredible people. They've got a back in Germany. They've got a lot of bike shops, and they spend a lot of the winter here. And private land, full on trail center that links to another farm that has a trail center that links to more kilometers that I don't even know what to do with. And it's more XC
Amazing.
trail. It's not as gravity fed as Canada would be, but
Hmm.
that side's catching on. 120 mil bikes, and then some of them get the
Nice.
150 mil bikes, and but like the
Hmm.
sheer amount of kilometers in this country and my region is insane.
That's amazing. It's good to hear. I mean, it's crazy to like think back to when we were kids, always getting in trouble and still getting in trouble for building stuff. And then now,
Yeah, but now you get paid to build.
yeah, like I'm in the bush with an excavator, smashing through the forest, and I'm just like, looking around my shoulder. I was like, oh no, wait, I'm supposed to be doing this. Because like, let's be honest, mountain bike industry is based and built on road trail building. That's what our industry has been based on, like getting permission to build a trail. Like if you got permission, there would be no trails because it just would take 10 years sometimes to get the permission to build the trail. And then when there's a trail network already there, they're like, oh, okay, there's a trail network here. Sweet.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you wouldn't get permission to build some of that shit you were riding in the North Shore, like, when free riding started
Nope,
in Canada. Thank goodness you
not at
didn't ask
all.
for permission. I don't even know how you guys kept some of that. I mean, it's just such
Yeah,
an accident waiting to happen.
it's definitely. And on that note, I'll shamelessly plug in my little side hustle business that I started, making trail signs. Like the business is called Trail Signs, and this was another side project that me and Jordy were working on too. We were gonna kind of bring it in and all the business stuff, but the whole idea is, signs that people can buy, cheap little plastic or aluminum signs that they can hang on trails. Because like even myself, like this spring, I broke my neck on a trail that I been told by the local builders the boys, they're like, hey, they've been working on some stuff. You should check it out. And then I just went and dropped in, assuming that it was going to be okay without looking at it. Where, as had there been a sign, hey, warning, feature has been changed, maybe it would have made me stop and get off my bike. And then, I've had other friends, that have been seriously injured. And I know there's dozens of stories where they didn't know there was a drop coming up, or they didn't know it was a gap. So just the mere fact of like hanging up a sign, hey, gap, jump ahead, I think it could save a lot of people from some serious injury and harm. So I've just been working on that little side hustle business.
Well, that's great, man, because that is how we grew up riding, and sort of trail education here. Maybe less of that. There's more guys that think they're entitled to ride these professionally built trails on private land and not pay a cent, because we have a lot of. You normally need to buy a day pass or a year pass, and it's become very formalized. And it's from what I can hear ahead of Canada, unless you go to a Whistler where you buy your ticket. But I think that's incredible, Claw. Like, that's a great initiative to get out there, because there's a lot of rogue riding or trails that get changed
Rogue
and people
building.
don't really think. Yeah, rogue building, huh?
Yeah. And that one thing that like I find a hard time, because on one hand, it kind of irks me that there's a lot of unsafe stuff being built. But then at the same time, I was that guy before. And you can't turn that person negative on building because you want them to be stoked on building. So I think that the happy medium between maybe an unsafe trail and a professionally built trail can be hang up a sign so people can actually at least, hey, there's something coming up, let me go check it out, versus assume, which is what's gotten me and many others so many times, is that the trail builder knows what he's doing, so the trail speed should be fine. I hit this one jump. Okay, the next jump shouldn't be a pedal. It shouldn't be a brake. It should just be a cruise into it. And then all of a sudden, you get in the middle of the air and you're like, holy shit, I'm not even close to making this. I should have taken 6 pedals. You know, that is someone that doesn't know how to build a trail. But if you hang a sign, hey, check things out, do this, do that, I think it's kind of in the middle of the conversation and the issue at hand. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, I was going to ask you, like, where does the responsibility lie? That's for sure a positive step, right? Because where is the responsibility? Because otherwise the council's going to come in and just stop all rogue building, right? So it's going to take more and more issues, and then it's going to get more formalized, which is a double-edged sword. It really is. But
Very so.
safety wise, it unfortunately probably will need to go more towards that route.
Always the responsibility needs to be on the rider. The rider is
Noted.
always
Yeah.
going. It should be, but in some places
If
it's
you're
not.
riding unmarked trails, then yeah, it's always, I guess, on the rider. Okay.
100%. But then if there's something that's out of place, hey, it should be marked. That's consistency is what I've found and learned in my um, professional trail building, is what gets people. When there's something that's out of place, that it's like you're like I said about trail speed, jump, 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 fine. Then all of a sudden one jump is either smaller or too long. It doesn't fit the trail speed.
Yeah. But then
That's where
I
you get
think,
people.
yeah, even rogue building and I think education. So this company you're starting is incredible. Okay, I need signs. Okay, well, there's your solution. So no more excuse. But maybe that's also more education, where it's YouTube videos or this podcast, is they should be dedicated trails that have jumps. And then there should be, like, with the signage that this is an extreme trail. Whether the trail
Yep.
builder's got it right, then at least okay, I'm going down an extreme one. It's a rogue builder. It's on me to go
Mm-hmm.
check it out. Or it's a blue trail.
Yep.
Like, guys, yeah, have respect for the trail markings, even on rogue building, I guess.
Yep, 100%. And just educating people out there, because that's the thing, is like there's so many people going out there nowadays, and a lot of the people didn't have the background that we did and rode really janky, sketchy stuff, and have the skills to generally handle almost anything that comes at you. A lot of people just got in the sport and they're just riding flow trails. Like they don't know how to ride old school janky rough, rowdy trail.
Yeah, true. And e-bikes is great for the industry, but it's also bringing more and more inexperienced riders to trailheads for
Absolutely.
sure, huh? You must see that. What's that
Yeah.
like in on the shore in Canada and
Um,
stuff?
it's fine. It's finally accepted.
Oh yeah,
It
you
took.
guys had issues with that.
Oh man, yeah. Like for the first little bit, e-bikes were just full faux pas. Like there's so much hate, especially in the States. There's still some areas in the States that are like, no e-bikes, but for the most part, everyone's kind of ditched their tune because most people have at least wrapped their legs around one and then realize it like, yeah, I can see one of these in my future. Maybe not right now, but eventually one of these will be under me.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's how to text back and forth with so many people. The biggest one is, can we have a conversation or debate about this? I say that's not a debate. There's not two sides. Like
No,
in the future you're gonna want to get one. You're gonna
yep.
probably ride more. You
Hmm.
why just accept it?
Why fight it?
Why fight it?
Yeah,
You're
and the
even thinking
batteries.
about it, dude. Just get one. It's just if it's gonna make you ride mountain bikes more, well, like go for it.
Absolutely, and like one thing that we can throw into this conversation is the terminology on full size e-bikes and half size. So a full size e-bike, call it the hog. So a half size e-bike, call it the chub. So we're going chubbing or we're going hogging. Hogging, full
Chubbing.
size
These are
e-bike.
Canadian words. They're not really universal. So
Actually,
the
yeah, it is. It's
full hog and a chub. What is it you're insinuating? A chubby.
it's half size.
A full pint or a half pint.
There you go. Yeah,
Uh,
it was
wait, you know what
actually
fucking pisses me off? Like now you've got to talk about a normal bike as an analog. Some people are calling them analog bikes.
yeah.
I'm like, that's just a
I've even
bike.
called. I've heard it called an acoustic the other day. I was like, wait a second, it's not a guitar. It's a bike.
Yeah, you get what it is, but you're like, I don't know, I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know about the analog as well. Yeah, it's
Dude,
an interesting space we live in, but it's fun.
dude, these e-bikes got what's the date? Oh yeah, they just released
Oh my
I forget
god,
I
like
forget
$25,000.
no, not the price. You must be thinking of someone else with an S that has bikes that expensive. No, it's 15.5 kilograms or something.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
a,
new
a
Scott.
chub. It's a chub.
Yeah,
A
it's the Chub
chub.
with the TQ
Dude,
motor.
do you
I
know
was
how
looking at it
light
the
that
other
is?
day,
Do you know how light that is?
dude. It's like
It's
31
light.
pounds.
It's like lighter than a downhill bike, and a downhill bike feels pretty good on the trail.
Dude, it's insane because I've been running the Levo SL, and that's like 36 pounds. And it's such a game changer because for me, like there's not much place in my repertoire for a hog. But the chub, that's
The chub.
that's for me.
Dude, the chub, a half chub, man. I agree. I'm all for the half chub.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
It's
I think they all
for
have a
guys.
different spot in the sport, but it's
Mhm.
just, dude, think about in 10 years. You're gonna
The
be
battery's
laughing at
getting lighter and lighter.
yeah. We're like, yeah, we
Yeah.
don't do no acoustic anymore. We don't do no analog.
Absolutely. And that's the scary part is like in 10 years, like I know people that 5 years ago in the United States, when I first started going down riding and talking about riding with the e-bike, they were like, never, ever, ever, ever will I ride an e-bike. Now they do not have a normal bike. Like
Really, yeah.
I'm like, oh, did you bring your normal bike? And they're like, no, dude, I went full E as soon as I got this thing. It was like regular bike out the door. I don't even bother with it anymore.
Yeah,
It's
when I
like
get
you were the one
yeah.
that was like so anti.
It's crazy, dude. That Scott Lumen. I'm like, sign me up, Father Christmas. That's what I need in my life.
Absolutely.
Why not?
That's a slick looking bike.
Yeah, no, they've done well there. No, that's a shameless plug, but it deserves it. I actually can't wait. I
Yeah,
actually can't wait.
yeah. And I'm actually starting my own bike brand eventually here once I get my shit
I
in order.
didn't know if that's off or on the table to talk about.
Anything's on the table.
There you go. Talk to me. Talk to the listeners. We had
All right.
a
Yeah.
conversation that you.
Mhm.
So I was going to ask you, and do you think sometimes, because you're full on with everything you do, sometimes you got into business, maybe side business too early in your career.
Mhm.
But when you do something, you do it full on, right? And you've
Unfortunately, yeah.
bitten off a lot here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my biggest bite off that I couldn't chew was a restaurant, and yeah,
Yeah.
that was some hard learning lessons and some good tax write offs. Was probably the only silver lining on that one. But with regards to the bike brand, biking is what I know. I'm very interested in geometry, designing, engineering, all that kind of stuff because I went to school to be a tool and die technician. So machining and metalworking is in my blood. So I'm very interested in it, and obviously I've been on a bike for my whole life, and I know what I like and I know what I don't like in terms of bikes. So we spent the last pretty much year and a half designing the trail bike, and super happy with it. And we're like almost at the push go button stage, and now we're just kind of pushing the button for getting the e-bike designed and engineered. So that'll be the next on the hot sheet. And the question is, maybe I can let my listeners and your listeners chime in on this. Should you keep the bike in the bag and have pre-orders, or should you just wait until you have inventory to show everyone what you've been working on? That's the
S-
question.
So you were asking if you want to show them what it will look like and do the marketing spiel and accept pre-orders,
Hmm.
or
Or
only do that once there is production timelines and you could get it the next
in
week or
hand.
something in hand.
Yes. Yeah. So like that's your two
Ooh.
models. Like one, okay, it's on the boat. It's going to be here in 6 months. I'm riding the bike. Everyone check it out. Here's a button. Click to pre-order. Or do you keep it under wraps and do all that marketing and promotion when there's a click to buy now and get next week option? That's kind of the
Shit,
conundrum that I have
that
right now.
is such a conundrum. I mean, I liked it
Hmm.
when I was a kid, and the guys were on prototypes, and you couldn't get it yet, and there's an allure to that. Shit, I don't know. I'm not deep
Yeah,
enough in
it can go
marketing
both.
of a bike.
It can go both ways, I think. But at the same time, I'm doing such low numbers.
Are you
I'm gonna
taking
start this.
the customer's money when they pre-order?
Yes, you would take a certain amount.
So, and then would it be a pro to the customer? Would he get a discount if he pre-ordered?
You would have to do some sort of a discount for the pre-orders for sure. That would have to be involved, whether it be like a
Shucks.
5, 10%.
That's interesting, man. It's for you and your partners to discuss. I guess it's a way to test orders, how many, what the quantity and stuff like that. If you can sweeten the
Yep,
deal, make it extra special, limited runs, and that could be quite cool.
yep. Colorways and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit. So
So
have you
wish me luck on that venture.
I'm wishing you all the luck, but I know you're someone that puts your heart and soul into everything you do. So I have all the faith
Mhm.
in it. But obviously, you're not releasing a name and much more info than you just gave now, I guess, because this is what you just asked.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
when do you
I think
now
that's good enough for the
the
planting a
tease?
bit of a seed.
That's wicked. I'll cut the
Yeah.
audio for you, and you can have this as a soundbite. You can tease it.
Nice.
That's
Love it.
wicked, man. It's not a bad way to round off. Where do we see you
Mhm.
next? What project are we going to see released on the World Wide Web?
What is next is Chasing the Inca Part 2. Look for that early spring. Ambrose Weingart will be editing that up and a bunch of stuff on that. And then my next trip I'm trying to do is trying to ride down some crazy volcanoes in Indonesia.
Oh, wicked. All right, I'll look for my invite
Hmm.
in the post.
Right.
Sounds good.
Do some surfing, spearfishing, and shredding down some
Dude,
volcanoes.
sounds the dream. But you've worked your ass off to get to this point, and I look forward to the content. Claude, if there's anything else, let me know. Otherwise, I think the listener has some homework and should reach out to you and
There you go.
give you some feedback on that bike question.
Absolutely. Love to hear your comments, folks. Chime on in anytime.
Nice. Boys and girls, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, follow the Claw on his journey. He's done so much for the sport. If you like this episode, share with a friend. I think that's the biggest thanks you can give me for having these awesome chats. But it was pretty fun. So, Claw, till the next one.
Awesome.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, buddy. Good to hang with you, even if it's online. Always a pleasure, my friend.